Are you being strategic or are you stuck in scarcity? Welcome back to the Living Vision Show. Today we're going to talk about this topic here. My name is Velky. I'm your host. I'm joined here with Marty Nocchi, our integrator at Get Out of Your Own Way. And I got to say, this topic is coming up a lot. So we're going to talk about it, you and I, wherever you are, whether you're running, driving, or at the office today, so that you become more strategic. And we're going to break this down in a way that you might not have heard before. I think the word strategy is a fun one to unpack. We're going to unpack it together. But first and foremost, you got to hear how I learned these hard lessons. I remember February of 2020 so vividly. February of 2020 was the most exciting time of my life. I was just over 30. I was weeks away from publishing my first book. I was days away from completing the tech build out for a startup that I had launched 7 years prior. Not seven, 6, 5, probably 5.5, 6 years prior. I'd raised capital. I'd brought a team together. Like the whole of my life felt like it was happening. I was trying to pull all of these things together in this big rocket ship moment of my life. What I had planned for the book was to go around and speak and do workshops and tour. What I had planned for the tech platform was to scale this company and start a march towards a more national presence. We felt like we had branding going for us. We had all these really exciting things. We had a platform that was going to come out. We had a train the trainer model that would allow for scale. It felt like the vision of my life was ahead of me. That was February. The book came out to a couple of pre-releases, got really good feedback. Parents were buzzing. Clubs were talking about it. I got some outreach that was really, really positive. And everything felt like it was golden. There was this whisper that started encroaching in March about this whole like COVID thing. It didn't seem like a big deal, but we were all kind of buzzing about it. The news started to shift, and pretty quickly it became a very real threat. And I will never forget how much I changed between March 14th and March 15th. On that day, when everything shut down, both of my initiatives were gone. The clients that we had lined up for Money Club, all the schools, things that take 2-year sales cycles and large budgetary conversations, all the contracts were gone. And then even though the book had launched, it launched essentially on Leap Day 2020. Sports stopped. Like all of sports stopped. Not just like pro sports, but like youth sports, the market I was targeting, gone. So I watched all of it decay. And on March 14th, a very different version of Aaron erupted. I wasn't full of gold and magic and like fairy dust anymore. I was afraid because everything changed in just a day. I won't tell you more about the saga, but what I will tell you about is what I was like on March 15th. Because March 14th, I lost all of the opportunities and potential that I had spent years building towards. And on March 15th, I became a totally different human being. I was making choices differently. I was thinking different. I was feeling different. I was talking different. Everything changed. And from that day, probably for about a year, my entire filter of making choices was what I thought was strategic, but it wasn't. I was scared. I was stuck in scarcity. I was being reactive. Even though I was doing stuff, I was actually being very passive. And I was just fighting to keep my head above water. The bank account had no money in it. All the contracts were ahead of us. So I'm trying to figure out payroll and apply for PPP I'm doing everything I can to make sure my team eats. I pull everyone together and say, look, I don't know how to make sure that you get a good life right now, but I can make sure you get food on your plate and your rent is paid. Like, I'll figure it out. I'll write you the check if I have to, but like, you got to choose to either stay in the boat or get off the boat. Cause I can't can't have you wishy-washy right now. It was just a hard time. It was a hard time. And I learned a lot of lessons about leadership. I learned a lot of lessons about how to get through hard times. Most importantly, what I learned is what it looks like to confuse strategy for scarcity. They're wildly different things. Marty and I are going to talk about it today. We've had a lot of conversations with clients in the last like 6 to 7 months, really just this year, I guess all of 2025, that have been difficult because there's a difference between strategy and scarcity. And we can often mistake the two. So we're going to dig into this. We're going to decompress it for you and give you a new lens to look through as you assess your own strategy for building your business, scaling your company, expanding your enterprise, and have a little bit of fun. Because if you're building a business, hopefully you're having a lot of fun. Marty, this like strategy scarcity thing is kind of confusing when you're in it, right? It's like having your head down and you're hoping to figure out the right way. What do you think if we umbrellaed this whole topic of strategy scarcity? Which one are you really in? Which one are you really playing? What do you think people get wrong here?
Well, first of all, I do want to say 2020 got better because that's when you met me then, later in the
year. Good one.
So things got brighter as the year went on.
That's fair. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll give it to you, man. My life has definitely improved. All hail. All hail.
What do we get wrong about strategy versus reactivity? I think it's easy to label reactivity as wrong or as something that you shouldn't do. Or if a building is burning, call 911. Like, you react to that situation. I think where we get it wrong is that even when you have to react in a situation, your eye should still be on the horizon. It should still fit within where you're going. I do think, as someone who spent his life in theology world, that comes fairly naturally to me because that was always the way. It was always about.
Yeah, you were trained to do that.
Yes. So for me, it comes fairly naturally. So I don't think reactivity is necessarily wrong unless it's reactivity for reactivity's sake.
Well, let's use today to dissect that, because that's what gets difficult is I need to react or I feel I need to react. And I'm making a choice thinking that it might be connected to the horizon, but I don't always know, right? And where I get stuck as an owner, an operator, and leader is like, I think this is a choice that takes me to the future, but right now I don't have the time or the space or the like energy to really have a consideration for that future, because the moment requires acting quick. And there's a difference in these moments in reacting and responding, right? We want to be in a more responsive state to think strategically about a choice. But ultimately, I agree with the position that we can't avoid reaction. We just want to filter it through the lens of strategy. What I think happens though is when leaders get in scarcity, right? When they get scared, and not many entrepreneurs are willing to admit that they're scared. So let's use a different word.
Which is part of the problem.
Yeah. So let's use a different word. When things get tense or unknown, right? Uncertain. That underneath that is like, I'm scared. And like, dude, I'll tell you, during COVID, I was absolutely terrified. I was so afraid that I would go to sleep and I would wake up in the middle of the night thinking that I missed my alarm, and that day, the bank draw was going to happen and we'd be done. And it was just like, it was over. Okay. Like, well, I guess this is it. And then I would go back to sleep and I would wake up in the morning being like, I don't want to wake up. Like, I don't want to deal with these problems. I don't want this. Like, dude, every day was like a firefight. So underneath all that was scared, but really it was just, there was uncertainty and there was instability, right? There was tension.
Which there always is anyway.
Right. Yeah. If you choose this path, better buckle up.
Correct. But just generally speaking, in the world, that's the world. There's always uncertainty. There's always unknowns. There just is.
Well, if an owner is feeling tension, if the owner is dealing with uncertainty, if maybe it feels more in front of them, there's a likelihood to shrink, right? To like tighten everything up, to not place resources, right? Not invest in things, not chase growth. It's just becomes scarcity. And any owner that has been in business for a while, that's been around other business owners, if they're not isolated, has heard the word scarcity and probably used the word scarcity, right? I get trapped in scarcity, I get stuck in scarcity. I've been there many times where I just get afraid, right? I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. And the filter that I use from at that point making decisions, this is like kind of zooming out and reflecting. The filter that I use for making choices, like, does this reduce my pain now? That's the filter I use for my choice. Does this reduce my uncertainty, my pain, my tension now? What do you think the consequence is of that? Because we got to understand the trigger and then the consequence.
Well, I want to add one other thing. I think if you are operating alone, you run the risk all the more of that happening. You just do. And I think it's important to, you better have someone that you can call. Most things are not that urgent. They just aren't. You might tell yourself that they are. They are not urgent. Again, if the building's burning, that's one thing. Most things you at least have the day to figure it out.
Yeah, or even 30 minutes, right? To just stop.
Yeah, you don't need a lot of time. I think that's probably the most important piece, to make sure that you stay in check in those moments.
So what do you think the consequence is of making these short-sighted, I'm just going to, whatever creates less uncertainty or less pain, I'm just going to choose? What do you think the consequences of that train of thought?
The consequences, it creates more uncertainty. I mean, you just kind of perpetuate the problem. It will lead to one more reaction because you hadn't thought it through. And so now I have to react to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah. Yeah. You almost train your system to do that. You know, I'm thinking of like whack-a-mole, right? So boom, and then it's somewhere else. Boom. And I'm constantly like trying to whack the mole, and pick the right target or pick the right, enemy or priority.
With the hope that you win the game. Right. That's
Right. It also is like, rather than address the leak, I'm just going to put a bucket there, and eventually the bucket's going to overflow, and then I've got to figure out a new strategy, or the pipe bursts somewhere else, right?
with the hope that it goes away. Right.
Yeah.
That's the crazy that we tell ourselves.
Right. So in a way, right, if we're playing this whack-a-mole game, there's A, the hope that I'll get it right. There's B, the hope that eventually it'll just stop. And then C, there's also this inherent, I think, maybe desire that when I hit the right mole, I'll just never have to do this again. And underneath all of that is a reality that you are not solving the problem, you're addressing the symptom.
Correct. You're putting a Band-Aid on it.
Good old Band-Aids. Emerson loves to be like, Dad, I got a boo-boo. Can I have a Band-Aid? And, I laugh because, one, it's adorable, but also because the things that he asks for Band-Aids for usually don't need Band-Aids, right? And I kind of think about business owners doing that, right? That's how they're like, all right, this needs a Band-Aid. Like, no, this doesn't need a Band-Aid. Let the wound air out, right?
Right.
Wait a second. Like, let it air out. Or it's like, bro, that needs way more than a Band-Aid. Like, that needs flipping surgery in your business right now. Like, you need to really dig into what's going on here. It's bigger than a Band-Aid. And I find that just as I sit next to people making choices, right, as coach and sort of confidant in some of these spaces, the pattern of making these choices is largely derivative of, I just want this done. And the fallacy is that by trying to rush into, I just want this done, it never gets done. It only gets like deferred.
It gets worse. I was thinking, we've been on calls with like this, where most problems, especially in business, are people related. but we don't take the time to actually learn what the problem is.
Yeah.
So we think we've dealt with the problem, but rarely have you dealt with the problem. If things haven't really changed and shifted, you haven't dealt with the problem. I think we see that quite often. We see that often. I'll just say it.
Yeah.
Because we don't know. People don't know. That's the quickest way to get rid of the problem.
Yeah. Here's a trend line in my experience as a coach. A symptom repeated is a problem neglected.
Correct.
And
you're dealing with the scratch while the person's having a heart attack.
Yeah, like you're and as a business owner, I get it. Like I do. Trust me, I've been there. Especially in that 2020 phase, like all I was doing was like navigating symptoms. But we can break this down and dissolve some of the patterns for CEOs. We do it all the time. Most people do really well in a scarce moment with frameworks and structure, right? So, hey, this is how you make choices, and let's play the end game here. But all of this is about, can you make choices to keep in mind the long goal? And whether you've got a detour, don't change the destination. And I find that what I get stuck in most is I very quickly change the destination because now the route is more painful potentially.
Because you've lost sight of the horizon at that point.
Yeah. So we're talking in
like, oh, look over there. Oh, that looks like a great place to go. Let me go that way.
Well, it looks easier, right? It looks easier. Like I don't want to deal with this problem head on, so this looks easier. I don't want to do this. Like I don't want to have to fire my team. I don't want to have to like build structure. I don't want to have to slow down and really rebuild the way that we operate.
You know, the crazy thing is your team already knows you're dealing with the wrong problem. They already know it.
Damn.
Because they could see better than you can.
Yeah, they can see it because they're not in it, right?
Correct.
Yeah. That's powerful.
But they're also not going to tell you.
They can't. No team is going to come to you. Well, a very rare team is going to come to you and be like, "Hey, dude, you're messing up."
Right. They're going to go home and tell their spouse about it instead.
Right. Yeah, somebody else. Yeah. Here's what I want you to think about. So, wherever you are in business, whatever your revenue number is, whatever your staffing looks like, there are three particular experiences and states that business owners get in, CEOs, entrepreneurs, whatever the leadership is. They get in one of three states when things become uncertain. And what happens is when you hit one of these states, rather than move towards the end goal, right? Your 3-year vision or something bigger, what scale looks like, what the next level looks like for you. Rather than work towards that, we work towards like damage control. And damage control, unfortunately, pulls like triple the resources in. It requires a lot of time and energy and ultimately doesn't progress you. So we want to make a distinction before I share the three states. I want to make a distinction between progress and movement. If you're busy, but you're not feeling like things are changing or evolving or progressing, you're moving, right? You're just active. And movement is not defined by direction. Movement is just defined by the change in speed or direction. So imagine like a dog in turbo mode, right? Dog in turbo mode is a great example of entrepreneurs in one of these three states. They got the zoomies. Marty, did you grow up with dogs?
No, but I'm thinking your son in turbo mode.
Yeah. Definitely, bro. He totally has turbo mode. Dogs have zoomies. Emerson has turbo mode for sure. And
he even gets like the look in his, you could tell.
Oh, I know, definitely. Like, yeah, turbo, here we go.
Like, brace yourself, here he comes.
I think dogs do too. Like when they're about to hit turbo, like zoomies, it's just like phew, 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 phew. So imagine that, right? It's you can visualize that wherever you are. It doesn't matter if you're a dog person or not. Like you know what that zooming mode looks like. That's what a lot of entrepreneurs look like. Now they're moving quick, and pacing is high. But like there's not really anything happening. And here's the funny part: when a dog hits zoomies, you just gotta let him run it out because you can't slow them down. You can't get in the way, like you just get run over. So you just gotta let them run it out. But after they run it out, you can kind of talk reasonably to them, right? You can steer them again. Now that's what movement looks like. So you may be in movement mode a lot as a founder, as a leader, where the frustration begins though is when you're in movement mode for a long time. You feel like you're sprinting all the time and you're not actually getting anywhere. That's how we can help you. We help a lot of leaders that are stuck in movement mode. Progress is marked. Progress is defined. Now, to have progress, we have to know an end goal, right? I can't say I'm progressing if I don't know my end goal. I can't say that I'm leaving Maryland and I'm going to Arizona, and I can't say I'm progressing unless I have an Arizona, because otherwise I don't have something to measure towards or against. So I've got to have something to measure progress with. And if you don't know your end goal, A, why have you not reached out to us? But B, there's no way for you to tell anybody that I'm getting better, I'm getting closer, because everything would then be in contrast to what it was, not in contrast to where you want to go. And here's what happens. Movement is based, the system of movement is largely based on measurement against yesterday. So is it better than yesterday? And then if you've been in this, maybe you know it, but I can tell you how it was in 2020 for me. If it's better than yesterday, that doesn't mean I'm making a choice to take me to the future that I want. It's just better than yesterday. And then I get way off track. And I got way off track. I got so far off track, I didn't even know how to get back on track by that point. And that may be you. But progress, if you have a consistent destination, you can always recalculate to that. You can always get off track and say, hey, I'm essentially deprogressing, or I'm unprogressing. What would the word be there? Unprogressing?
Degressing.
I'm digressing. Degressing. Digress. I don't know. If you're listening, please tell us how to say the opposite of progressing. If I'm doing the opposite of progressing, at least I still have the end goal, right? I know I'm moving away from it, but I have to have the end goal. Marty, you and I have worked with a lot of companies who have no end goal, or aren't clear on their end goal, or argue the method to get to a place that isn't defined. Why do you think it's hard to define a destination? It's hard to define what you want, or harder to know where you're going?
I mean, that could be different for me than it can be for others.
Well, how do you struggle with it?
I have a hard time saying what I want. That for me, that's just a difficult question. It's because I immediately jump to, well, the possibilities are endless. That's how it feels for me. So it becomes almost difficult to answer that question because it's too big of a question for me.
I think that's a really common thing for CEOs,
you
right?
Could say, do you want to go to Phoenix or to Tucson? Then I'm like, okay, I could decide.
Then you can pick. Yeah, so the scope is too big.
Correct.
Amazing. I think that's real, and anybody listening, I'm sure, can relate to that. Scope is too big. One for me is I play with what I can get, not what I want, right? I play within the realm of known versus possible, right? That's what I struggle with. And those are probably the two most common ones, right? Hey, the scope is too big. I don't know what I want because I could do anything. And particularly if you're successful, the field of options that you have is bigger, which is why I think as you get more successful, people really struggle with transition periods between business. Maybe they exit, right? Maybe they go from, they operate their business to now they're just the leader. They're just the visionary. They're like, what do I do? Because there's so many options, you don't know where to pick. So I think that's a really common one.
The other piece for myself, this is me, there's also a feel to it. Like I know, even looking for a place to live, there is a feel that comes with it. Does it feel like home in that moment, whatever that is? So for me, there's also that element of it. I'll know when I know.
So this is good, because I think this is where the three states really start to get into not being just abstract ideas for people. So let's hear this, and then I'll describe the states, and then I want to dig in a little bit more. if I don't know what I want because the scope is too big, and I know when I feel it clash, it sounds like you just make no progress, right? Because I'm waiting for the feeling, but like I'm assessing way too many things.
Which is why, you know this of me, why movement is so important for me. I have to keep moving in that process
Yeah.
or it collapses quickly.
Yeah. Keep assessing, keep assessing, keep assessing, keep assessing.
Correct. I might have to see 1,000 places, but I'll go see 1,000 places and I'll still know. But I
Yeah.
got to keep moving in it.
The march to the unknown. You gotta march into it.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, let's explore this a little bit. So again, wherever you are, you're jogging, you're running, etc. Like you got to know about these 3 states because these 3 states are probably what's trapping you in your current stage of business, stage of personal life, stage of health, stage of your leadership. They're all the same. So these states, these experiences happen usually because of a trigger, and each one has a different sort of feel to them. The first one is scarcity, right? Scarcity is a disconnection in resource out and resource in. So I'm afraid to put resource out because I won't get resource in. I'm afraid to invest in a program or coaching or a service or a product because I'm afraid it won't work for me. And the only way to know if it works for you is to do it and evaluate it and bring it back. But even then, even if it doesn't work, you then have some basis and education and experience to then make a better choice, right? But if I don't believe that the resource will ever come back, that nothing is coming back to me, I'm stuck in scarcity, right? That energy out is wasted, that money doesn't return back to me, or that there's no benefit of me making some kind of choice. What scarcity usually creates for most of us, certainly for me, is a distinct pause in everything. Everything pauses when I'm in scarcity. And when I'm scarce in business, I'm scarce in personal. Like everything halts because energy doesn't flow out. And if energy doesn't flow out, energy can't flow in. So I put the wall up because I'm like, I don't want to leak money, right? I don't want to be giving away money right now. So I put the wall up, but now the wall prevents things from coming in. So that's the problem that happens with scarcity. The second state is passivity. Passivity meaning no action is taking place. Now, scarcity looks like passivity sometimes, and they can kind of dovetail, but scarcity isn't, I'm not going to do anything. Scarcity is actually, I'm afraid to do something. Passivity is usually, I'm not sure what to do. So I'm going to keep myself remarkably busy assessing what to do. So passivity is a cover up. I'm not taking action. I'm electing, and I'm deferring the decision that I need to make. So maybe you're looking at, just because I know it, right? A coaching program, or you're deferring applying to do a speech or a speaking gig, or you're deferring which car to buy, right? It's really easy to be like, all right, well, I'm just going to keep looking at options and options and options and options and options. And I can't decide. And we say that we're undecided. What's really happening is I'm afraid to make a choice. I'm essentially being passive because I'm waiting for information. And here's the fun loop that we get in. Information always requires and demands more information. Action always demands and requires more action. So if you want to get out of passivity, you have to make a choice. You have to make some kind of choice, even the wrong choice, but at least you made a choice. Then you got state number 3, probably the most powerful and potent of them. Again, they're sort of all related. We draw these in a triangle, a downward facing triangle to denote where this tends to take people. The bottom of the triangle is the third one. The third one is reactivity. Reactivity is an urgency and a hyper vigilance in the now, an over calculation or an overvaluation of right this moment over the long game. So in reactivity, I'm putting so much pressure on right this moment, and I'm discounting all of the value of the future, which means that all of my choices, all of my discretion, and all of my resources are going into like band-aiding, putting out fires and solving problems just based on this moment. Reactivity is really dangerous because in reactivity, I typically neglect to look at the long run. I typically neglect to look at the cost in the long run. And so I might make a choice that feels good now, right? It's low pain, but high cost. And as a result, I actually forego all the things that are good for my future, right? Really, really good for my long run. and might bear a high cost. But I'm like, no, that doesn't matter right now. I'm just going to focus on what's good in this moment. And often, this is where we start to defer, kind of like a credit card was, right? I'm just going to pay the minimum payment, and quickly the interest grows because we're making short-term choices, not long-term choices. So those are the three states that are really important as an entrepreneur, or founder, or CEO to get your mind around. And if you're in a transition phase where you don't know what your long-term looks like, that's usually the place that people end up. Marty, I can see your gears spinning, but I want to hear more about this. Like, when possibilities are endless, which one of the three do you go in?
Well, I do want to say one other thing before that. When you spoke about credit cards there, that you become indebted to a system that doesn't work already.
Yeah.
We just met with a business that does this. And then it begins to feel like it's impossible to change the system because I'm so indebted to it and everyone's tied to it. At least with people, you have to be able to separate people from the system, begin to change the system, and the people will automatically either come along or they'll take a hike, which is what a lot of times needs to happen. So it does feel impossible in those moments. And I'm going to stress again why it's so important to have someone else. I can help you get to the horizon, no problem. But to do it myself is a whole other story.
Yeah.
The value of having someone else help in that process.
It's so important. And when you're in those states, I do think it's critical that you have someone around you that can be like, hey, come back.
Correct.
And I place no judgment on being in those states. I'm in those states often.
Every one of us
Sometimes you've helped pull me out. Sometimes someone else does. But it's really critical that you get help getting out. Otherwise, the cycle can last for a long time, right? I know plenty of people who have told me about an idea and are stuck in passivity. I need more information. How do I raise capital? Well, I promise you're not going to learn how to raise capital sitting behind your desk reading about how other people have learned to raise capital. It's just not going to happen. And
I just want to say, if you have never been in that situation, you're in denial. You are in that situation right now, and you can't admit it.
yeah. You're essentially,
you're a human being. You've been there.
You're essentially in passivity by saying,
right.
Hey, that's never happened to me. and look,
not me.
When, like, I get plenty of text messages from clients who are like hitting their wall, and it's one of the three, right? It's always one of the three. We just did a podcast episode about like, hey, I'll do it myself. And when you're stressed out, how your operating system comes to the forefront, right? Whatever your default system is and belief system is, it will come out when you're stressed and when you're taxed and when you're tired. And in that moment, right, something like I'll do it by myself, scarcity. I can't ask for help, because if I put time into asking for help or I put resource in it, it's not going to come back to me. I'm not going to get the kind of help that I want, or you're going to leave, or I'm never going to do enough.
You're going to judge me. You're going to do all those things.
Yeah. It's just a fascinating piece of business, right, the people game. So let's dig into this a little bit.
What was your question though? Go ahead.
Oh, well, what for you is the state that you get in when your scope is too big and you can't figure out what to do? Do you go into passivity, like looking for information? Do you go into scarcity, the like hesitation to deploy resource and energy? Do you go into reactivity?
Well, I used to think it was passivity, but I think it was you that said you think it might be more scarcity. I don't think it's reactivity. I tend to not be a reactive person. So it would definitely be more the other two. And one may lead to the other.
Yeah. I definitely go into scarcity and reactivity. Those are typically the two that I favor in tension. And
I would shut down before I react.
Yeah. So more likely to go to passivity, right? Like, I'm just going to hunt for info. Yeah, I think I tend to go the other way, where I end up favoring a lot of reactivity. Like go fast, right? This is my default. And probably make very reactive choices in that moment. It's actually hard for me to slow down enough to make when I'm stuck in one of those states, to slow down enough to make a really good long-term choice, not a short-term choice. Well, what I want to focus on here is not these three states. What I want to focus on is what someone can do, or how to notice that they're in these states, and then what it looks like to act differently. And what we're positioning is that, if you're stuck in one of these states, scarcity being the loudest one, you're essentially not able to act strategically. And you and I sit in, conference tables and long, big office dorms that leaders are sat at with their team, and they're trying to figure out, how do we be strategic? But they're often making choices out of scarcity, passivity, or reactivity, not progressing towards the long run. And what I think needs to be said is that you can't have a strategy stuck in scarcity. You also can't have a strategy without a long term. It's impossible, because I can't figure out. Strategy is essentially, what method do we use to get where we want to go? And if I don't know where I want to go, how the world do I make a roadmap there?
I mean, I'm different. You know that? But 99%.
What he means is he's weird.
99% of the people that we work with have to slow down. Like, that is one of the biggest problems.
Well, hold on. I want to qualify that, because you are different, but you're an integrator. So if an integrator is listening, this is probably not your problem. If someone is listening and they're a CEO, they're like me, right? And we're just like, I'm going to go fast. When I'm stressed out, I'm going to go faster, 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 faster. Whereas if you're an integrator, when you get there, you're going to shut down. And what you and I have learned to do is modify each other. So when you get stuck and don't move, as an integrator, my job is to help make sure you move. And when I'm like reacting out of control and hit the zoomies, your job is to be like, hey, dude, let's slow down a little bit. Let's make some good choices, not reactive choices. So you're different in contrast to me, but I think any integrator that's listening would be like, oh no, dude, I do that too.
Correct. But I am different.
Marty's on his high horse today.
Well, depends on how you listen to that statement, that I'm different.
Yeah. Well, look,
different things.
I think because we've had a couple conversations this week about this with people in the trenches. I'd love to hear your perspective of like what they think they're doing, because when you're in one of those states, you think you're being strategic. So how do we correct when we think we're being strategic, but from the outside, you and I are like, that's not strategic?
Well, again, because I would be helping someone like you in that situation. It's slowing down and it's asking questions, I think, is a big part of it. Because the questions will begin to reveal the gap that exists in that thinking, especially if they think they're being strategic. It will help to start to reveal the gap between the reaction versus where the strategy going forward. At least some of them don't even have a strategy. Reaction is their strategy. So it's helping them recalibrate where they're going. Strategy, I think, can be very broad. If you want to get to the horizon, if you make a wrong turn, I can still get you back on track and get there. And I think that's important to keep in mind. It can be broad. It just has to be moving in one direction. Some of these places don't move in one direction. They try to move in three directions.
Dude, in 2020, I consistently moved the goalpost. I moved where the horizon was. And the reason I did that is because as I moved, I would hit a wall and I'm like, okay, clearly that's not the right direction. And sometimes being strategic means you got to hit the wall and like lean into the wall, right? There just are things that happen in strategy that require you to go through them. You can't completely pivot your whole direction forever.
Yeah. And this is me as someone who has been a leader. I think from my background, it helped to deepen my faith. It helped deepen my being able to trust myself in those situations. I think when I'm reacting, I don't have to trust anything at that point. I'm just reacting. But you when you are being strategic, you're also forced to go deeper in yourself to kind of really feel where that is. And that's how it has helped me.
I think of the game of chess.
And I am not a chess player, but I've said this many times. It's all about chess.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you playing chess or checkers? Yeah. So when I think about chess, right, the end goal doesn't move. Checkmate is the end goal. Now, if someone puts me in checkmate, I have no choice but to essentially react to that. But it's very easy, and this is what happens in chess and in business. We get in checkmate, right? A problem strikes, or real big challenge, or market, or COVID, or whatever, and we make the first reaction quick without really looking 1, 2, 3 moves ahead. So we move a piece in place, and then what happens? Our opponent takes that piece, and we're back in checkmate.
They want you to react.
Yeah. So now I'm back in checkmate. So what do? Okay, block, check, block, check, block, and all I'm doing is like I'm hustling around, trying to make this game last. But every time I play defense, I lose another piece.
You're boxing yourself in at that point.
I've got no options, and the more I move, the less options I have. So that feeling is what I think business owners.
The other person's like, can we just end this game already?
Yeah, just give up. And that's not to say that it's a perfect metaphor for business, but that feeling of, dude, I put another piece in and it got toppled. I put another piece in and it got toppled. That's what it feels like in business sometimes, where you do a little defense, right? Band-aid the problem, solve the symptom, and like, okay, I'm good. You wake up the next day and it's like, oh shit, man, I can't catch a break. I just need a win, right? I've said that. I've heard plenty of clients say that, man, I really just need a win right now. And that principle is really important to establish. Despite that, there is still no change of the end goal, right? Still the same end goal exists. I'm going to get to that king and I'm going to put you in checkmate. That's the only way the game works. But the game is simplified down. And so many business owners tout that they want simplicity, but make things complex. What's the end goal? Well, 7 houses, 14 businesses, 13 enterprises, at least 4,512 people employed. I want to change the world. I want to end world hunger. I want to make sure the axis spins north instead of south. Like, right? Complicated things. And it's hard to be strategic in complication. It's very hard. What makes chess really fun to play is that there are a lot of strategies and you're learning what the opponent's strategy is and you're gaming against them, but the end goal doesn't move. It's a simple win. It's a simple outline.
Yeah, I think the other element of that you could take away from that is you can only control what you control.
Mm-hmm.
Can control. I can't control what the other person's doing.
Yep.
They're going to move the way they move. I can only control mine, and that's why being intentional about the choice is so important and not reacting in those moments. I had heard, I was listening to an interview with Martin Sheen, and he made the point where everything is finite. Nothing lasts forever. It just doesn't. You keep your eye on forever. And I think when I was made director of a retreat house, within 2 months, I didn't have money to pay people. And I always had to keep in mind that's just a short-term problem. As long as I knew where we were going and what that place could be, it kept that short-term pain in check compared to the larger picture. I could still tell you that the vision was spiritual powerhouse for youth. That was it. That was the vision for the place. And as long as I keep recontextualizing within that vision, it keeps those smaller things in check.
Yeah, to even have a long term, which you and I have talked about.
Correct. Which essentially is the infinite at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like strategy only exists in stillness. And I struggle the most with stillness. It is my deepest struggle. It is my hardest place to get. And it's also what I want the most, right? To like, what I want is right next to what I avoid. And for a lot of leaders that espouse for a business that grants them peace and possibility and adventure and all these things, like, well, the only way to design that business is to get out of reactivity. Because if you're in reactivity, I can promise you, you will never experience a break, no matter if you're on vacation in Fiji or you're on the fucking moon. It will never happen because you're incapable of the peace that you want, right? I want to build a business that allows me to take 7 days away and truly disconnect. Well, the business isn't the problem. My problem has always been that if I go away, I can't disconnect. The business runs fine, but I'm still in there like trying to run all these equations in my head. And strategy exists when we zoom out far enough to keep the end goal and the starting point in context. Without both of those places, where are we now and where are we going? There is no such thing as strategy. If you cannot see both points, you cannot build strategy. That's why when we look at a map, like we don't route a destination zoomed all the way in on our house. You zoom all the way out and you look at the whole thing. And what here's a great metaphor. When you go to like Google Maps and you type in, where are you? Then you go to route and you type in the destination. What's the first thing it does? It zooms all the way out. So you can see the whole route. And if you're stuck in scarcity or passivity or reactivity, you are basically zoomed all the way in. You're like fixing on pixels right in front of you and you can't always see the big picture. And I think that's why anything that can zoom you out is important. Reflections, coaches, mentors, friends, family, like anything that helps you zoom out and be like, hey, dude, when's the last time you thought about where you were going? Or when's the last time you thought about what your route and strategy looked like? They're critical.
I do know in terms of slowing down, I've done a lot of silent retreats over time. Yeah. It takes a good 3 days for your head to finally start to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is also the fear as to why people won't do it. Because as soon as I slow down, the head starts to race, or you just become aware of how your mind is already racing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're kind of always in it.
Yes. Yeah, you're just not aware. Do all roads lead to scarcity then?
That's a really profound question. No. Choices with no frame lead to scarcity. Choices without context. You got to keep context is vision. Context is where you're going. Context is what's the destination. Context is what's the end game. Look, and this applies to everything, right? Let's talk about dating. Because there's a way to date in scarcity. I got to make it work with this person. Oh, I mean, there's like giant red flags, but like it's got to happen for me. I'm turning X age. So I'm going to miss it.
It has to be this person. Yeah.
It has to be, and it has to be right now, and it has to. So if the end goal is, this is my healthy relationship, this is what it looks like, these are my standards, my boundaries, my expectations, this is what I give, this is what I relentlessly pursue, and this is what my life looks like with this person. Well, okay, now I'm not making choices out of scarcity, reactivity, or passivity, right? Passivity would be like, I'm not dating. Reactivity would be like, I got to go on this date right now, even though like there's like something's not right. I don't feel good about it. Scarcity would be like, I think I have to marry this person because I'm running out of time, right? Like all of those things create problem. So not all choices lead there though, but choices without context do.
But I'm going to give my own caveat to it, because you could do everything right and still end up there. Because like chess, I only have control over my pieces on the board. I don't have control over everything around me. And I mean, the circumstances of my own life, like losing a parent changes things. There are things beyond our control that can lead us down there, even if we're doing everything right. And that's still not a bad thing. It's just going to help expand you more.
Well, here's what I think the difference is. What you're talking about is I'm progressing away from the goal. But how, the only way to know that you're progressing away is to still have the goal.
Correct.
Right? Like, and I think the challenge for people is like, well, it's getting worse. Well, how do you know it's getting worse? What's the end game? And without the end game in mind, you can't measure. You really can't. You can't assess without an end goal. And we as in the culture of entrepreneurship, we place an overemphasis on the goal. Like, here are my 67 goals for the year. I want to read a lot of books. Well, okay, I appreciate that you have the goal, but do you have the end game in mind? Is the end game to just read a bunch of books? I did that. One year I read 52 books. I don't remember shit from any of those books except maybe like one line. I didn't implement, I didn't integrate, but I read them. So was the goal to be educated, or was the goal to be braggadocious about how many books I've read? Right? So if we think beyond the goal to the end game or the vision, then I think we have a much better time measuring progress, because goals should take us towards the end game. If I said, hey, the goal for today is to get from Maryland to Maine, but our end game is to get to Florida, man, I'm kind of making a whack ass goal. And a lot of goals are masqueraded lack of strategy. Here's the goal, but it doesn't take me to strategy because it's not contextualized to the end game. And I think we have a lot out of our control, but still with context, we can navigate things that don't go our way or that happen that we can't fixate on.
Part of the assessment, I think, is it actually getting worse, or does it just feel that way in the moment? It can feel that way, but that doesn't mean it is. It can still be moving you towards where you're going. Things are just, it could be an identity that you were holding on to. It could be something that within you that is falling apart. So it feels that way, but that doesn't necessarily mean it is. You could still be going where you're going.
Right. Which that has to be incorporated into strategy, right? That it could get worse before it gets better.
Correct.
Which in any pursuit of
and I've been there where it gets worse.
Me too. In any pursuit, I believe, in any pursuit of a worthy end game, a worthy vision, it will. Like, dude, even if you're like, dude, I'm going to get in shape. Dude, you're going to the gym consistently. Like, you are transforming. But it doesn't get, like, it's not like an instant process. It gets typically worse or harder or more painful before you have like your like kind of big breakthrough.
Yeah, at first it feels like nothing's happening.
At the end of the day, what I want you to know is that if you're caught in scarcity, passivity, or reactivity, there's a different way. There's another way to operate. And what you're experiencing in those places feels like good choices sometimes. And then you look back and you're like, that was not a good choice. It was a short-sighted choice. Not even that it was bad. It could just be short-sighted. If you're stuck without a clear strategy, if you're not operating your business, your personal life, your pursuits, your ambition with a strategy, if you're not clear on what that looks like or even feels like, because when you operate from strategy, it doesn't require the same kind of velocity. You don't have to be in zoomies mode all the time when you operate from strategy. And I can tell you, having been in scarcity for 2.5 years and for situations I'm not going to talk about right now, it's hard to have strategy when you're in those cases. That's why we get help. That's why you raise your hand and you go, I need somebody to keep me accountable to strategy. I need somebody to hold me to this. And I need some help thinking about what it even looks like. That's why we have that. That's why we are that. But also, you can get it a lot of places. It's just important that you get it so that you're not operating from the 3 states, namely scarcity. You're instead being strategic. If you don't know what it feels like to have a strategy, to find a zoom out, still centerpiece that you can say, okay, I know the battle strategy going in. I know the roadmap. I know I can't predict everything, but I'm confident in the way that we're going to get there. Please reach out to us. Let us help. We've got some frameworks and tools that can guide you. We've got a retreat coming up in January that might be a perfect fit for you to zoom out and build your strategy with us together. There are so many ways that we can help, but no one can help you if you don't stop. That piece of stopping, of stillness, is important. If you don't raise your hand and ask for help, you'll never get it. I promise you, no one is coming to save you. No one. There have been guys where I'm like, hey, dude, your hair's on fire. Can I help you? Still will not accept help. Help has to be asked for before it can ever be received. And it's very hard to ask for help if you're stuck in scarcity. So reach out if you are there. Happy to assist you, support you, show you a different way. Reach out to somebody else if you feel more inclined, but don't sit on your hands and don't wait for someone to come rescue you when you're being whatever the opposite of strategic would be. In this case, we're talking about scarcity.
Or reacting.
Or reacting, yeah. Yep. We appreciate you being here, being a part of the show. If you like this episode and the things we talked about, send us a DM, hit me on Instagram at Aaron Velky, or go to the Living Vision Show here on Apple, wherever you're listening to it, and write a review. That would mean a lot. We got lots more episodes coming your way, and we appreciate you being here. If you want to learn more about our retreats, our programs, our coaching, our services, and our ability to change your business, check out living.vision. Go to that website, and you can book a time to talk to us, and we'll figure out what's going on. See if you're the right fit for us. We're pretty selective about who we work with and how we help them scale and grow, but you might be a good fit. I appreciate you today listening in. I hope that you get unstuck and back into strategy, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks again. Have a good day.